Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. This is my Game of Thrones recap for Episode 2. Episode 2 was better than the first episode in my opinion. However, it still didn't really advance the story, and with only 4 episodes left, they still have a lot to do. The acting was once again superb, but the writing was lacking a little bit. They just kind of beat us over the head with blunt dialogue. The show doesn't have the level of writing it had when George R.R. Martin was consulting, and they also had the books to go on. The way the character dialogue flows was a lot better back then. In the trial of Jaime scene, it was great that Brienne stood up for him, but not really a surprise, as she has acted in the best interest of people the whole show. And not just blindly like Ned Stark. Like, she makes smart decisions, but she tries to be honorable about what she does. But she doesn't do it to the point of being stupid. The other thing in the scene that I was curious about was the Golden Company. He says that they have 20,000 men, and that it is enough to beat Dany in the north. But they should have much bigger numbers. There are supposedly 100,000 Dothraki, and more of the Northern Army and everything else that is up there. So I don't see how the 20,000 Golden Company people is enough, unless they expect that like 80 or 90% of the army is going to die against the undead. I don't think that's going to be the case, or things are going to be different than they're kind of expecting. Arya shows just how deadly she has become when she is just casually tossing the blaze into the wooden pillar, and then Gendry decides that he needs to make her weapon right away after he kind of gave her some pushback on it. I think that Arya might be the most well-trained fighter in Westeros, between Syrio, spending time with the Hound, and the House of Black and White training. Jaime talks to the Three-Eyed Raven and gets closure to him pushing Bran out the window. The Three-Eyed Raven was correct in saying that the one push set off the whole chain of events of him going north of the wall and becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, and that everything would be a lot different if that didn't happen. I guess Ned still would have gone to King's Landing to become Hand of the King, and he still would have been killed, and the war still would have happened, but Bran would have stayed in Winterfell instead of going off on this quest. It is kind of creepy the way he asks, how do you know there will be an after? Like, he seems to know more potentially than he's letting on, and that they might all lose. Like, he doesn't have this optimism that everybody else seems to think that they're going to win, and they're going to fight off the undead and defeat the Night King. But I'm pretty sure that he's not giving all the information that he has between this scene and the later War Room scene. He may know that the long night is unavoidable, but that he can prevent it from becoming permanent. The Brienne and Jaime relationship has become one of respect. And I think it already was, but Jaime just hadn't really verbalized any of that before. Like, he didn't insult Brienne, and he asked to fight under her, and he meant it. He thinks that she's a great commander, and a great leader, and a great fighter. And then later on, he ends up knighting her, because that's what she always really wanted. She wanted the respect, the title of being a knight, when she knew that she could fight them and do everything just as well as the men. But just because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to. And he kind of breaks that tradition and gives her what she wants. I think Dany has the right to be upset with Tyrion, but she has a hard time with advisors in general, and just does what she wants. Luckily for Tyrion, Jorah tells her to forgive him, and that they all make mistakes. She has made plenty of them along the way, and always seems to forget about the times that she screwed up and things went poorly for her. She has killed lots of innocent people to further her rule. In a lot of ways, she seems no better than the Mad King, killing off perceived threats, whether or not they were actually the threat or not. She would just sacrifice people to the dragons, or hang them on crosses, because she felt that the masters were evil, even though some of them weren't. She talks to Sansa and she finds, for the most part, is able to smooth over the relationship. But Sansa won't yield on her free north. And I think Sansa's still being a little bit ridiculous with this, but they have to come to an understanding. And even though neither of them know that Jon is a Targaryen at this point, and that they could just get married and then Jon could be king and Dany could be queen, that would kind of solve all of it. But I don't even know if they're going to make it that far, but that would become a noble marriage then, and it wouldn't be her marrying a bastard or anything ridiculous. Theon shows back up and wants to fight for Winterfell, and is wanting to protect who he thinks is Bran. He has had such a crazy character development. A fall from being trusted by Robb to being Reek, to saving Sansa, to running from saving Yara from Euron, and then eventually saving her, and then now being back at Winterfell. I think that he's shown growth as a character and has changed a lot. I still don't know if we can totally rely on him to be able to save Bran, but it would be a fitting way for him to die. I also kind of think that that's Beric's job is going to be to die saving Bran. That's why the Lord of Light keeps bringing him back. The reunion with Tormund, Jon, and Ed is great, and they now know that they only have a day before the big battle will occur. The Three-Eyed Raven strategy to wait for the Night King in the Godswood seems risky, and I don't think that he actually expects the Night King to come and get him, and that he has an alternate plan, but that maybe since the werewolves seem to be the source of his power, they can make him more powerful and he'll have better control. Maybe he can warg farther back into the past or the future or something and find out exactly what he needs to know in order to defeat the Night King. Maybe like a proximity to them being together does something. And I think Tyrion hearing his story will give Tyrion a lot of insight, because he's probably the one person that can believe everything that the Three-Eyed Raven tells him, versus everybody else just dismisses him as Bran. Grey Worm and Missandei talk about Noth and the plans they have for after the war. Makes me think one or both of them is going to die, and they're not going to have this happy ending that they were expecting. When Sam, Jon, and Ed are at the top of the wall and talking, we see Ghost for the first time in a while. I think that they'll explain his absence by saying he was staying in Castle Black and hadn't been following Jon around this whole time. Ed saying that now our watch begins was a very powerful moment, and they are some of the few remaining Night's Watchmen, and this was their job. They didn't necessarily sign up for this, well, Jon did, but the other ones were kind of forced into it, but they took that role, and this is what they have to do. It seems like Jaime and Tyrion have forgiven each other for the things in the past, and have both grown from where they started off, and they only grew because of everything that's happened. Tormund really takes center stage when he talks about why he is called Giant's Bane and chugging a full horn full of milk. Arya sitting with the Hound and Beric is more or less forgiving both of them and saying that she doesn't need to kill them anymore, as since they were both on her list at one time. Which kind of makes me feel like one or both of them is going to die. I still would like to see a Clegane Bowl between the Hound and the Mountain, but with the amount of time remaining, I don't know if it's actually going to happen. There's a lot of fan service in these first two episodes, and I feel like they wanted some happiness for the fans before they start tearing it all down and having a large number of people die and unhappy things happen. Arya and Gendry finally show their feelings for one another, and while it seems like the general consensus on the internet is that it was creepy because Maisie Williams looks so young, she is 22, and realistically it's fine. I think that was just everybody's initial reaction to it, even though she's roughly the same age as Sophie Turner, they just look different ages. Jorah and Lyanna Mormont talking about the future of their house makes it seem like one or both of them will die. Sam giving Mormont his sword completes the circle of all the important swords changing houses. I think Dany has every right to question Jon being a Targaryen, since she has put his brother and best friend were the proof, and I think that's right. But he's also honorable and wouldn't lie about it, and that he doesn't want the Iron Throne. So he has no reason to try to trick her into saying that he's a Targaryen. But anyway, back for a moment to the sword thing. So Ned's sword is now the Lannisters and Brienne's sword, and so Jaime has Widow's Wail, which could be important potentially. Like, the name of that kind of goes back to some of the secret lore in the books, but that really hasn't been touched on. And now the Tarly sword is with the Mormonts, and Jon has the Mormont sword. I don't think that Dany is going to cede control of the throne to Jon, because it's something that she's wanted her whole life, or thought she has wanted. Like, it's been her singular focus for a long time, and that isn't really, like, all she's cared about is ruling Westeros, even though she knows nothing about Westeros. It's just like her destiny, or whatever she thinks it is, and maybe it isn't. They mention the crypts way too much in this episode. They still have no subtlety with the hints, and this obviously means something. Maybe we see dead Starks rise from the graves or something. Hopefully they fight for the living and not for the dead, but you never know in this show. I think it is very important that we don't see the Night King when they show the approaching White Walkers. It may have to do with the vision that Dany had when she was in the House of the Undying, and the dragon over King's Landing, and the burned down Red Keep, and the ash falling, and then her opening the door and it leads north of the wall. So maybe that dragon in that scene is the Night King and not her, as was previously thought. And the Night King might be going to King's Landing to build a bigger army so that he can definitely win. They definitely made mention that there are 1 million people living in King's Landing earlier, and it doesn't seem just like a throwaway line to know, like, it seems to have some importance. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.